recommended, yeah, and then you can send the link.
Right, and then it will download. Okay, so let me share the screen. Barney, you made it, great. Oops, I need to actually go like this. Oops. There we go. Okay, here we go. Does everyone see the screen?
Yes.
Great.
I
Okay,
do.
take it away.
Okay. This has been a great delight to do this. I've had a box sitting in my childhood bedroom closet floor for almost 40 years, so it was kind of fun to dig it all out. So here we go. I did not follow the normal path that skaters did go to Ice Capades. So you're gonna click, right?
Yep.
Paul?
So you tell me when.
Okay. Now it's fine.
Paul, can you make it full screen?
Oh, you can't see it? Okay.
No, can you make it so it's a full screen thing or not?
If you want to, I can. Hold on. Stop. Nope. Back. Escape. Full screen. There we go. Yeah, but the problem with that is now I can't get to Zoom.
Oh, okay. All right.
Yeah, that's why I've got to do it the other way.
Okay.
Stand by, we're having technical difficulty. Which one? This one. There. But if I go like this, I can make it bigger. Does that help?
I don't think you're sharing screen at the moment.
Oh, okay. Is that bigger
That's
for
good.
you?
Yeah, that's good.
Oh, that's big. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, Barb, back to the beginning.
Next slide. Please. Thank you. I wanted to dump this picture, but Paul really liked it. So there it goes. I started skating when I was about 2, but it wasn't figure skating. And here's the only photos that I have as a child. When I was 5, we moved to another house and it was 6 houses away from the rink. I was in heaven. I would skate in the afternoon, then go home for dinner, and then go back in the evening. And probably some of you done that same thing. And then my mother would see the lights go out at the rink, and she'd know that I was coming home. She'd watch me walk up the hill in my socks because my feet were too cold to put my boots on. And she'd have a pile of water waiting for me. And that went on for about 5 years. When I was in 1964, when I was in 6th grade, we moved to Chameau, and they didn't even have a rink in Chameau. So my skating just kind of ended. Even though we lived on Chameau Bay, it wasn't good skating. So next slide, please. So I did other things in high school. Skating wasn't an option, and Lake Placid was the only artificial ice anywhere, and my parents couldn't do that. So I did other stuff. When I chose my college, I chose Queen's University in Kingston, Ontario, because I had an ice rink. It wasn't too far from home, and it was a good school. So and they hadn't raised tuition on American students at that point. So but when I got there, I thought everybody from Canada was a really good skater, so I was really intimidated, and I didn't do anything. I didn't even join the figure skating club. So my skating really happened. I transferred the next year to Cortland, and then the year after that, my father had retired, and Cortland actually asked him to come down and open the ice rink and start hockey. And so he came. My parents followed me to college, as my brother said, and so we started all the hockey programs, all the skating programs, phys ed for the exceptional child, all kinds of youth hockey, etc. at Cortland while I was a student there. And my senior year, you see that I finally got to skate in a show once. That's my first one. If anybody knows Swan Lake from Funny Girl, it was a lot of fun. But my summer schedule is really what I wanted you to see here. And that is every day except Wednesday, I was a tour boat announcer on the Uncle Sam boat tours. And then after I'd get done work, then I would drive to Canton, skate for 2 hours in Canton, and then go home. Except on Tuesday night, then I would drive from Canton and go to Lake Placid, skate all day Wednesday in Lake Placid, drive back to Canton, skate 7 to 9 in Canton, and then back to Alex Bay after that. So this I did for 4 summers. Next slide, please. So after I graduated from college, not wanting to coach or not wanting to teach physical education, like my paper said I should be able to, I went to Placid to skate. My father referred to it as graduate school, although it was a lot more expensive than graduate school. And I had a lot of jobs. You see down there on the lower left-hand side. And I was really, I lived at the Holiday Inn because they had a little closet that people could stay in, and they liked me, so they let me stay in that closet. It's hard to find housing in Lake Placid. So if you see on the right-hand side, you see Tyler Cranston. I don't know if anyone knows who he is. I know, Brian, you do. But there's a little bit of his bio. Tyler came to Lake Placid when I was skating there the year after I graduated from school, and he was rehearsing his new company in Lake Placid. And I don't know if you know how practice goes on an ice rink, but everybody's going every which way. And the way that you telegraph to other skaters so you don't run into everybody all the time is you make eye contact. And the one who blinks first is the one that gets out of the way. And I got out of the way for Tyler Cranston about 95 times. And I finally said, I've learned to eat liver because I can't afford regular meat, and I'm going to do this Lutz this time. And I refused to move, and he moved for me. I thought I was really excited about it. I called home and told my parents. So next slide, please. So every Friday night after Ice Capades is done with the show, they hold auditions in every city that they go to. And they were in Kingston, Ontario that next February. So I bought tickets for myself and a friend, and we went over there, and I auditioned. So I was really excited and sort of nervous, but mostly excited. And I went backstage after the show, and they gave me a dance card, which is simply where you put all your information, and told me to sit down on a bench to put my skates on. So I did, and I made out my dance card and put it on the pile that was sitting on the bench, and I put my skates on, including my guards. And when I got up, my skate bag caught the edge of the bench and tipped the whole bench over, including all of the dance cars. They all got wet, and I was the one that did that, and that was kind of not a good way to start your audition. and then I got nervous, and I turned around too quickly, and my skate bag again hit a bunch of folding chairs, and they all went down like dominoes, like probably 50 chairs. It was just horrible. And then I was so concerned at that point that when I went out to step on the ice, I of course forgot to take my guards off, and splat, I fell down immediately. And also every Friday night after the show, there's a broomball game, usually. And the broomball players were there warming up also. And so everybody is skating there's a lot of people doing an audition, a lot of people, the broomball players, and we're all doing figure eights, backward figure eights, etc. And when you move from doing one type of backward crossover to the other side, you move from left to right, you have a blind spot when you turn your head around the other way. Well, in that blind spot, I ended up hitting a broomball player with a can of beer in his hand, and the beer went flying one way and I went flying another way and he went flying a third way. This was not a good audition so far. So we warmed up, and so I started to warm up and do spins and jumps, and the jumps were fine, but I started spinning and I just couldn't get the sit spin, and I kept sitting down on the ice, and I looked up at my friend in the stands and I just went like, I can't believe this, and started laughing, and she was laughing up in the stands, and so it was just horrible. Then they started to give us a combination to do, and Roxanne said, left T, right T, grapevine, inverted T, stop, slap, clap, snap. And I'm like, what does that mean? So I had to ask her to demonstrate it. And when she did, I said, oh, I know how to do that. I know how to do that. So it was just awful. You can click here, I guess. This is the way I felt at that point. If you know a chorus line, you'll know that this came from there. And then I heard my name called, and you can click again, Paul. Brownie Hill, which is my name at the time. Congratulations, you passed. We'll call you. And I couldn't believe it. Absolutely couldn't believe it. So they were going to call me. Next slide.
Do you want the next slide? Okay.
Please. Oh, that's right.
Yeah,
We have
you want the video now.
We have a clip. Yep.
Right. Okay, so hopefully the sound will work for everyone. We were having a little bit of problems, but hopefully this will work.
That of the performance director.
Can you
it's
hear?
her watchful eye that determines who ultimately gets one of the few open spots in the Ice Capades ensemble.
The main thing I look for is the look of the skater out on the ice, and then I look for skating abilities. I look at the ease they have in performing the tasks we ask of them. We do basic steps, and I see how they're performed, how their body moves, if it moves with ease or if it's stiff and they have difficulty with it. The way they carry themselves, the way they project themselves, if they're able to have fun with it and sell it, that's what it's about over here. It's different from amateur skating, but with some skaters it comes very easily.
Okay, so now I go back to.
So had I known at that time that they weren't looking for great amateur skaters, I probably would have felt a lot better about it, but I didn't, because they didn't call me. So I kind of lost faith. And what do you do when you lose faith? I got married and moved to New York. And so over on the left-hand side of the screen there, you'll see all the receipts from the ice time that I bought at Sky Rink, which was really up an elevator on the 16th floor. Very strange way to get to an ice rink. Had lots and lots of jobs when I was there. In the middle was my skating pro, Peter Dunfield. He actually was very famous after that. Elizabeth Manley was, I think, his most famous pupil, won silver medalist in the Olympics. But I got a job as an assistant hairdresser backstage on the revival of Brigadoon on Broadway. And I don't know anything about being a hairdresser, but I have really long hair, which is the guy that was the best man at my wedding told them, she's not a hairdresser, but she will always be here. And they didn't really need a hairdresser. I just pinned fake ponytails on the 8 male dancers. So it wasn't a big job, but you had to do it. And you had to be there an hour before the show to do it. So I had that. And from November to December, I was off the books. In January, I said to the business people, I don't feel right about this. I would like to be put on the books. So they said, well, you're going to get a lot less money. And I said, I know that. So anyway, they put me on the books and I did get a lot less money, but then the show closed in February. And so then I got unemployment. Because who's going to hire an assistant hairdresser who doesn't know anything about hairdressing? So that freed me up to skate a lot more. And after a while, a couple weeks, Mr. Dunfield said, Brownie, why are you doing all this? What do you want? And I said, well, I passed Ice Capades, but they haven't called. I want to be in a show. And he said, okay, go get an 8x10 glossy, which you see on the right. That's what I did. And he said, I'll give you a name. In fact, I will give them your number if it's okay. And I said, yes, absolutely. So next slide, please. So Ron Urban International Ice Shows entered my life. I went to Maggie Valley, North Carolina, took a ski lift up to the top of a mountain at an amusement park called Ghost Town in the Sky. And this guy, Ron Urban, was quite an operator. As you can see, he produced the first ice show ever to appear at the White House, and that was the previous December. He called Peggy Fleming and he said, I'm going to be producing a show at the White House. Would you like to do it with us? And she said, yes. Then he called the White House and said, I have Peggy Fleming. Would you like us to skate at the White House this Christmas? And so that was going to be the next year also. But you can see them doing my makeup, which I didn't know how to do because I didn't ever wear makeup. Down at the bottom on the left-hand side, you'll see the rink was in this condition on a Sunday when we were supposed to open on Friday. You can also see, and I also want to mention the person in the green that's skating in the background there. Her name is Megan. Her name's going to come up again. You see my red house coat there. That's when I saw the costumes for the first time. I walked out onto the ice and I just started crying, saying, I have a college degree. Why do I have to go out dressed like this in front of people? But that was the first costume that I had on there. So I got over it a little bit. And so I was there for 2 weeks. Somebody else came to take my position there for 2 weeks. And I went back to New York for a couple weeks and then went to Gaslight Village in Lake George for the summer. And during the summer, Megan, who I pointed out earlier, called me in July sometime, and she had run away with the high dive guy from the whatever, that deal that they had there. And her parents couldn't find her. And her parents were calling me because we were friends. She was 17 and she didn't like to skate. So we talked all summer, and in August, I finally convinced Megan to come home, and I convinced Dad and Mom and the stepmother to agree to let her ride horses again and stop skating once she got home in the fall. Everybody was happy, except me, because in Lake George, we had awful ice. We had it was littered sometimes with bolts and nails and all kinds of stuff. And you know, when your skate hits something, your skate stops and you keep going. And this was about a 4 foot, about 4 feet off the cement floor with tables and chairs there. So it was really, really unsafe. The scenery would fall down all the time. A lot of the costumes were put together with safety pins, and as you can see, saddle sore Sam right there in the middle. I was saddle sore. I came off after one solo, and the safety pin had gone into my neck, and I had blood streaming down out of my neck. And so I began to agitate for labor laws. You know, all the other skaters that were there were young kids, and I was 28 by that time. And I had a degree in hand, even though I didn't want to use it, and they didn't. But if they got hurt, they didn't have any backup plan. So, so I kept talking and it didn't work. And not only did it not work, but then my contract was not renewed for the fall, which meant no White House, no Peggy Fleming, and Ice Capades still hadn't called. The only person that called me just after Labor Day was Megan's stepmother. And she said, Megan says you want to skate in a show. And I said, yes. And she said, which company do you want to go into? And I said, well, I think Continental because they come closest to my home. And she said, are you sure? And I said, yeah. And I said, why? And she hung up. So 2 weeks later, I came home one night. My parents met me at the door and said, you got a call from Hollywood and they're calling back tomorrow morning at 10 o'clock. So next slide, please. So they called back the next morning at 10 o'clock and it was Bill Bain, and he was calling to invite me to join the Ice Capades in Odessa, Texas, of all places, Cindy. So it was pandemonium in my house. Everyone was jumping up and down for hours, it seemed. I had sent my resume every Monday from about March to Bill Bain with an 8x10 glossy stapled onto the other side. And every Wednesday he got that same 8x10 glossy plus the resume. And it finally worked. But you know that it didn't work. It was Jeanette who made a phone call that said, hire this person. and they did. So you can see my contract there with all the dues that I had to pay for AGVA, et cetera, et cetera. So September 28th in 1981, I was on my way to Odessa, Texas. Next slide, please. So there's a cast photo. I'll give you a hint. See if you can pick me out. I'm wearing pink and I have feathers. Good luck. There might be a reward if you can do that. Next slide, please. So I'm in Odessa, and the very first thing I learned about Ice Capades is that you have a set weight. Everyone has a set weight. They don't do it with skin calibrations. They don't do it being weighed in a pool to look at body mass, et cetera. They look at you and they say, you should weigh this amount. And that's it. And so my set weight, it was very fair for me. Mine was exactly what I weighed, 110 pounds. It was extremely fair. But you could only go up or down 3 pounds without being fined. And if you got fined 3 times, then you were sent home. So I wasn't particularly concerned about it the first year, but second year I got fined a lot, and they did not send me home. But anyway, the second picture down there on the left, draw your attention to the dash. Now, anybody who's been in a rink has seen dasher boards, commonly referred to as the boards, but they're actually called dasher boards. And the dash for Ice Capades, you can see, was about 10 inches high. And you can see small separations between them. What you can't see is all those separations are, there's another separation halfway between each one of those. And when you look at the piece of paper standing there in the middle, you'll see that that's marked off in a half a section, 1 section, half a section, 2 sections. And that's how we block the ice, the way you would block where you're going to be on a stage. And every single beat, I believe, I can't remember if it was every beat or every 2 beats, of every piece of choreography in the entire show was in this Bible. And you, as you learned a number to go into the show, you learned it on the Bible first. So there was a lot of mental acuity going on there. And And just as a side note there, you can see that the numbers go up to 9. Places like Amarillo, Texas, we had numbers that went up to 11 or 12, but they didn't actually go up to 11 or 12. We just started about 15, 20 feet above the contour, where we would have usually started right at the contour. And other places we had tank ice, which means we brought our own ice, and that sometimes was only 7 markers long. And so we'd have to squish the whole choreography into a very, very much smaller ice surface. But that's what you did, and you had to be able to do that. The upper right-hand side, you see a picture of the contour. That's what everybody sees when they come into Ice Capades. It's not called a curtain because there's lots of curtains behind it. And that just depends on what the show calls for. I had rehearsal on Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday of that week. And that was that. Then we traveled on to Wichita, Kansas by bus, as you can see. And on the right, there's my schedule for the first semester. I still think in semesters. So next slide, please. So I opened to Gershwin's Precision. It was the most wonderful music ever possible that it could be. And on my brother's birthday on October 8th, 1981, I had learned just one number, that number. And it came about 3/4 of the way through the show. And as you can see on the left-hand side, my feet are up. I'm sitting in my dressing room, all dressed and ready to go. And I guess I just forgot about the time because I heard the announcer say, "Ladies and gentlemen," and I thought, oh my gosh, that's my cue. And I ran out to the ice and he said, "Please welcome the very best, the Ice Capades and their escorts, the Ice Cadets." And the music started and the contour started to go up and I was in my spot. It was very, very, very nerve-wracking. You can't see me because we took it from the wrong side of the ice, but I'm on the other end of the stairway over there on the ice. That was my starting position. So if I had been up on the top, it would have been rough, but it wasn't, thank goodness. So at the top, everybody loves the pinwheel, and Ice Capades went into a pinwheel often by a 4-spoke pinwheel. And you can see on the left-hand side, I'm the second girl. On the left bit of feathers, the second one's me. And then on the photo below, the second one in on the left again is me. You'll never know it, but that's, I wouldn't even know it. Everyone looks the same and it's designed that way. In the upper right-hand side is the board. That was our communication vehicle. And down at the bottom, I think it's too small, you can't really see that, but it said I was going to go in for Precision. It was going to be my first night. And then at the top, it says another good show. Love. I just lost his name. Dick Palmer. I can't see it because I don't know, maybe everybody else can't see it either. I don't know. But Dick Palmer was the president of Ice Capades, and he had come into Wichita on a whim just to see the show for a couple of days, and he often did that. But it was pretty exciting to have him there. And then that's my very first costume, Precision, Gershwin in Ice Capades. Next slide, please.
Paul, by
Yeah.
expanding the picture, you've cut off the whatever pictures are on the right-hand edge of the screen because the pictures of people covered it up.
Does
Thank
that work?
you.
That's better?
Yes.
Okay, sorry about that.
Yeah, that works better. This just shows you what move-in looks like. We traveled on Mondays. We traveled by bus and plane. It seemed like all the long hauls were by bus and all the short ones by plane, but maybe it just seemed that way. You can see here all the electrical equipment and the sets and everything. The beautiful mirror balls already up. We moved on Monday. The tech people moved on Sunday night if they were bringing ice with them. So they would go to the next city right after the show on Sunday. They'd strike the set and then they'd go to the next show and drive all night long because they had to have time for the ice to freeze. And so they'd make the ice and then they'd move the show in. The right in the upper photo, you see the local dressers that came in every week. We had 5 or 6 usually every week in the girls dressing room, and the boys I think had 4 or 5. They were union AFL-CIO and they were pros. I myself had 2 the first year. I had 2 10-second costume changes. So I remember coming off the ice on stage right, behind the contour, people stripping clothes, other people putting clothes on, getting rid of my top hat and cane and putting on white gloves, and boom, out on stage left. So, and nobody, we couldn't have done it without the dressers. They were great pros. This is Madison, Wisconsin. They gave us a real treat when the marching band came out before we started our show. So that was a lot of fun. And the photo on the lower right-hand side, I put in there, that's me as Raggedy Andy, and my friend Audrey sitting on a stool as the pincushion. But really, I put this in so that you could see the musicians set up behind us. We had a tape that everything was recorded, all the music was recorded. But then we had musicians also that augmented the tape. And I believe, I can't quite remember, but 5 or 6 musicians, and they were awesome. One time, I believe it was Amarillo, Texas, one time the tape stretched and it slowed down when it stretched. But the musicians kept going at the same tempo that we had been going. And we never rehearsed that. So nobody really knew what to do. About half of us went with the musicians and the other half went with the tape. And that only lasted for about 12, 16 beats, but it was disconcerting to say the least when it happened. And it only happened once, thank goodness. So next slide, please. Actually, the next city after Madison was Green Bay, and it was the year that the football players had their first strike, and the Packers were locked out of their facilities on whatever the name of the field is, Packer Field or Lombardi Field or whatever. And so they were using the fitness facilities in our hotel.
Lambeau Field.
Lambeau Field, yeah, thank you. I knew it wasn't right. And so we became friends with them all week long. We partied with them and exercised with them and sat by the pool with them. And you can see at the bottom of that photo, I mean, you know which ones the Packers are, they're huge. And down at the bottom of that photo, you see Ty and Randy, Ty Babylonia and Randy Gardner. You might know those names. They were U.S. national champions for years and years and years. And he's the one that pulled a groin muscle during warm-ups of the 1980 Winter Olympics, and they couldn't compete. It was just heartbreaking, absolutely heartbreaking. But they skated with us so often that they were with us almost every city. It was great. You can see I'm showing one of the Packers some figure skating moves there in the second photo. And down at the bottom, we signed autographs everywhere. But in Green Bay, it was particularly special because Green Bay had an inside place where kids could come in and get autographs, so they could get autographs from whoever was playing there. And so it was really cool because we had lots and lots and lots of kids. And it was a 3-show day on Saturday in Green Bay every year because it was a small house and they sold out everything. Well, we, being friends with the Packers, got them all tickets for the first show on Saturday morning. And I'm on the left at the end of the kick line coming down the ice, and I'm waving to the audience, looking at the audience, smiling, and I hear all this laughter in my right ear, and I'm thinking, what's going on? Why is everybody laughing? And I looked up, all the Packers in the front row were all standing and applauding, and the whole audience realized that their Packers were in the stadium or in the house, and they went bananas. It was so fun. It was so great. And I also had a step out, which coincidentally was called that, even if it wasn't the music, stepping out with my baby. So I had to step out for that, and that was one of my 10-minute change or 10-second changes. I had a short skirt on, I had a blouse underneath that vest, and no gloves. They put the long skirt over me, took the vest off, took the blouse, gave me a vest again, put the gloves on. I gave him my hat and my cane, and I was out again on the other side of the on stage left. And you can see the reviews there at the top. My opening night, I was a little bit behind there, but I could see that I did get my skirt flounced up. So there's a special technique to do that. Who knew? So
What is that?
next slide, please.
What is a step out?
What's that?
What is a step
Oh,
out?
I'm sorry. A step out. You see in that review there, Bill Tillman's in the middle, and there's 4. There's 4 girls, 2 on each side, and he was a lot of the numbers had a group number and then a soloist and then some sort of a mishmash of the 2 and then another group number. And those soloists were called HAPs, half-ass principals. And Bill was a HAP, and he had a number, and we escorted him out to light orchestra, I think. Earth, Wind, and Fire. I will never, ever, ever hear that music without thinking I have to do choreography along with it. So a step out is just a small part of a number that you have that's extra to the number, and it's they don't give you any money for it, but it's another opportunity to be on stage or ice. So and this is just kind of the nitty-gritty stuff of being on the road. You always have to have your skates looked after. It's just a horrible thing when you lose a blade out on the ice, and it happens. It's almost as horrible when you lose a costume out on the ice, but that happens too. Thankfully, it didn't happen to me. Down on the lower left is our skate sharpener. We took it with us wherever we went, and a lot of people knew how to sharpen skates, myself included. The next picture to the right there, you can see our fishnets, and you see a lot of little white dots on them. Those were our fishnets that we had to wear, and they got cut up unmercifully by blades, by costumes, by ice. And so we had to do a lot of darning, and you can see I only had white thread. So I mended my fishnets with white thread. And then from the time this picture was taken till I put them on, I put makeup on them, and you never know, you just never know. Up in the middle, half-hour notes, just like theater. Here's everything you did wrong last show, correct it. This show. In the middle, you see Tom DeShane is doing his best showgirl impersonation. He's with my theatrical trunk. We had 2 suitcases for 10 months being on the road, but we also were able to have these trunks. And they had, when you open them up, they stood opened up, and one side was hanging, had hangers on it and a drawer in the bottom, and the other side was all drawers. And so we would have those trunks brought into our hotels about every 2 or 3 weeks, because it costs money for them to lug them. And they are mighty heavy. If anybody wants one, let me know. Mine's for sale. It has a lot more stickers on it than it did at that point, though. And the very serious picture of me down at the bottom is because I was in the bar waiting to find out whether I was going to get an option for the next year. We had options in Sherbrooke, Quebec, and everybody was waiting in the bar after the show. They would take us into one by one into a room and discuss how we did so far for the year, and then say whether you're going to be invited back next year or not. Thankfully, I did. I got invited back. Not everybody did. There's a lot of people that left out of that after that knew they weren't coming back the next year. So, and sometimes we had when we were traveling, we had some surprises. You see at the top right hand side, Audrey and I were in a mall. We stopped in this mall someplace in Indiana on our way from, I don't know, Dubuque, Iowa to Dayton, Ohio, I think, and walked into the mall, and there was an ice rink. So about 20 of us ran back out to the bus, got our skates, put our skates on. We gave an impromptu show in the mall to the delight of everybody, including us. It was great. It was a lot of fun. And in Flint, Michigan, someone got out of an elevator on a floor that wasn't mine, and I heard all this singing. And I said, so I got out of the elevator too, and I followed the music. And I found a door that was half open, and I looked in the door, and it was all these women, and they were sweet Adelines, and they were having competition that week in that hotel. It was awesome. I spent every single night after the show in the hotel rooms with them, just singing away. It was awesome. Because they were excited that Ice Capades was in that hotel too. I believe I might have a napkin or two from that particular hotel in Flint, Michigan, but I'm not positive about that since this is being recorded. So next slide, please. We had visitors from the LA Hollywood studio. Here's Bev and Shirley and Bob Turk. They're like the bigwigs. They're producers. Shirley was one of the main choreographers, if not the main choreographer. And when we would go in the precision number, and this happened always in rehearsal, we had to do precision for Shirley when she came in. And when we would come down the ice and stop in the front, in front of the front row on the kick line, Shirley would be sitting in the front row, and she'd point her finger and she'd start on her right side of her line, and she'd say, "She's too fat, she's too fat, she's too fat, fire him, fire her, she's too fat, send her home." And that was that. No labor laws here. And that's the way it worked. And Shirley was an icon in Ice Capades, and well, Bob Turk was too. So they were what they said went, period. And you see Audrey and I waiting for the bus, and then Audrey and I waiting for the plane to go home for Christmas. What I did over Christmas break was my taxes. You can see the Ice Capades had an expense ledger with their name even on it. And every single cent we spent for those 10 months, we could take off our income tax. It's a good thing too, because we didn't make much money. Next slide, please. So we came back after Christmas that first year, and Let's Celebrate was the name of the opening number. Here's a lot of different costumes. That most numbers had variations on a theme for the costumes, depending upon what your role was. And you can see in the upper left-hand side, I'm the second one in, and there's 3 different costumes there. And the small one, that's me waiting for the show to begin. And those are pods that come down from the there's two beams, and those pods start out at the beginning of the show way up at the top of the beam. And as the music progresses and the lights actually come on, those pods come down and open up, and oh my goodness, there is a woman inside. So on New Year's Eve, when we were in Lexington, Kentucky, one of those pods fell. And a line of boys and a line of girls doing choreography. I was in the girls' line, and about 15 feet in front of us was the boys' line. And I was playing, of course, to the audience, and I see this lady's eyes get like huge and just terror on her face. And then I realized that that pod had fallen just right in front of me. If it had been 2 beats later, it would have killed 2 or 3 of us at least. So what do? You keep skating. And the roadies came out, pulled the pod off the ice, pulled Barbie Smith off the ice, and we just continued on with the number. Barbie was hurt quite badly. She did join the show again the next year. But after that, all the flyers quit, all of them. Next slide, please. And so what did that do? That opened up auditions for new flyers. And guess whose hand went up first? So there I am at auditions for flying. That's the harness. Actually, that's the harness for the butterflies. I was not a butterfly. I was a spinner. And my harness didn't have the shoulder straps. But you can see the wires that go up to the beam. And when we're backstage, there's a number of different components of that particular, well, all the big production numbers, but this one is called Latin Fire. And the lights will go out, the music will stop, and then it'll start up again, the lights will come back on again. And the part that I was in was all under black light. And so I was backstage, and Tommy Hilford, who was on the other beam. We were both on the front beam. I was on stage left, he was on stage right. And what we did was come out in one of those blackouts, holding our like 2 feet long rod of steel. And it had swivel hooks on the bottom of it, 2 of them, and a swivel hook on the top. And we would affix those wires to the swivel hooks on the bottom, and the top swivel hook, when we got out there, they lowered something down, they lowered the thing to connect it to down from the beam. And then when the lights came on and the music came on, Tommy and I would start to spin, and they would pull us up to the top of the rink, like 50, 60 feet, depending upon where we were. And under black light, you can see that costume, those fragments of fabric would flame out, and they look just like flame under black light. So it was pretty cool, and it was very exciting. That was my opening night right there. You can see that it was opening night because I had boot covers on. I hadn't painted my boots yet, and there I am spray painting my boots, my lovely white boots, to beige so they wouldn't show up under black light. And on the top right, you see where my costume was kept, the wig at the top, my costume's on a hanger, and then the harness down at the bottom, and then another shot of the costume, which was my favorite. Next slide, please. This is an emotional one. My parents finally came to see me in a show. We were in Kitchener, Ontario. It was my father's birthday, and they surprised me. Halfway through the show, I don't remember what night it was. This ticket, I don't know where this ticket came from, but I think it was Friday night that they came. Halfway through the show, we're intermission, and I'm backstage, and an usher came through the contour and said, "I'm looking for Brownie Hill," and I happened to be walking by him right then. And I said, "That's me," and he said, "I have a box for you." You know, today we'd worry about it, but at that point we weren't worried about it. And I thought, geez, that box looks familiar. And opened it up. There was a little note in there, and it said, "We're in the audience." and it was all full of peanut butter cookies. It was awesome. And so everyone was happy with the peanut butter cookies, and I was frantic the rest of the number. Where are they? What seats do they have? Why didn't they tell me that they were coming? And I could have put them in the front row. So, and then that was in February. And then in March, they came to Sherbrooke, Quebec. And my mother brought a huge turkey, and everybody had turkey sandwiches. And they all adopted my parents and called them mom and dad. And then they came again in April, and mom brought peanut butter cookies again to Rockford, Illinois. And that was by request. But I also want to show you Mr. and Mrs. Thompson in that lower left-hand side. Mr. and Mrs. Thompson, he was superintendent of schools in Lake Placid, where I lived on and off for those summers when I was there on Wednesday or Tuesday nights. And they were friends of my father's from Cortland. And Mrs. Thompson, for years, 2, 3, 4 years, she would pull me into the kitchen every now and then, and she'd say, Barbara, I just have to say this because I know you're going to be so disappointed if you don't make it into Ice Capades, into a show. People just start so early here, and you have to know that it's a really long shot. Meanwhile, Mr. Thompson's always standing in another room, crooking his finger at me like this, come here. So I would follow him into the living room, and then he'd point his finger at me and say, don't you listen to her. You listen to your parents and me. We know that you can do this. So I was incredibly proud when I knew that Mr. and Mrs. Thompson were in the front row, and the contour was about ready to open for precision. It was really quite a moment. And then on the right, you should recognize her. This is Peggy Fleming. She was my idol, is my idol. She's a wonderful person. She skated with us twice, and I got to spend quite a bit of time with her backstage. And so the first time she skated with us, we were in Rockford, Illinois, and my parents came again and to Rockford. And my brother and his family actually came also because they lived about an hour away. So I had my family there, and the first opening night, Peggy, we all lined up at the end of the last number, and we had these capes on that had about 100 light bulbs on the capes and a battery pack. And so we would swoop backstage, get the cape on, they'd give us the battery pack, we'd hook it around us, and then we'd light ourselves up, and we'd go back out for the presentation of the principal skaters. So we'd be along the dash, and I'm waving to the audience, only about 5 feet away from them, and grinning my head off. And all of a sudden I heard the announcer say, and I can't even say this 40 years later, our guest skater, Miss Peggy Fleming. And I just started weeping, and I'm smiling and I'm waving, but I'm weeping at the same time. And this woman in the audience is looking at me like, what is wrong with you? It was really, really amazing. It was an amazing moment. Next slide, please. So we did get paid, not much, but we did get paid. And we had to have a place to cash our checks. So the company would arrange every city, well, every 2 cities, because we didn't get paid every week, every 2 cities to have a particular bank cash our checks. And there's the line. And a lot of people, I don't know if anybody that's listening has seen Ice Capades or Holiday on Ice or Disney or Ice Follies, but there's a lot going on. There's music, and there's all kinds of spots, and there's all kinds of different kinds of lighting, and people going everywhere all at once. And usually the audience doesn't see that people fall, not all the time, but I don't know, maybe I fell once every 5 shows. Every time anybody fell, they had to put a quarter in the champagne fund. And at the end of the year, Well, you can see the size bottles of champagne that both Roxanne and I had. And so we had a champagne party in Casper, Wyoming. It was something to take the pain away that it was the last city. And Tom DeShane over here on the left in the corner there with Richard changed the sign on the living toy machine, which made Raggedy Andy a real person. Said it's closed for the season. And there's our trucks. Not all of them did we use. Those are for all of the companies. There are 3 companies, East, West, and Continental. And so we had about 4 every company, I think, that we had 4 trucks. So next slide, please. And the second year, we had something different. Most everything was pretty much the same, except the people weren't the same. And the group of people the second year wasn't as fun as the first year. But you can see on the left-hand side, that's me. I have just come off the slide with the blue leotard and the leg warmers. That was silicone. And we started that number. It was our precision number that year. And we started the number, everybody up on that like 10-foot tall platform. And then as the music started, we started to come down that slide one by one. And it was pretty fun, but it was also pretty tricky when you get down to the bottom, because you know what figure skaters are like. They have those big picks on the front. And if you don't pick your feet up, your toes up, as you get right at the juncture of the ice and that slide, your skate's going to stop and you're going to go head first into backstage. And that happened quite a bit in rehearsal. So much so they knew that was going to happen. So they had a mattress there with a couple of roadies holding the mattress. I did not ever do that, but a lot of people did when we were rehearsing, and it was interesting anyway. And in front of you right there is the back. We're going backwards there. It was called a sway block. And there were 3 lines of 12 skaters. And we're going backwards, and we're going to get into the kick line when we go back to up as far ice as we went. And there's my costume for precision the second year. But I think we have another clip, Paul, and you can enjoy precision on parade. I think I'm the last skater in front of the camera when the music stops at the kick line, but you won't be able to tell.
Okay, so is everyone seeing this one?
Yes.
Okay.
Can't hear it very much, Paul. This is a sway block.
Is that stop motion or is it my computer?
I think that's your computer.
Okay.
I think it's mine too.
I'll try to get it on YouTube.
So I could, it's on YouTube. Yeah, it's, I can send you the link if anybody wants to really see it.
I would like to because I just got total stop motion.
Sure, sure, absolutely. So next slide. And that's the story of this girl who really loved ice skating. Up on the right-hand side, you can see my last show was done on Cortland ice again. They invited me to be in their ice show at the end of the year. That second year I went back home. And fittingly, the name of my program was Last Dance by Donna Summers. And then I was living the dream on the Zamboni with my skates and a glass of wine and an evening gown. It just doesn't get any better than that. So thanks for your interest, folks. I appreciate it. This happened a long time ago. I
That
think
was
we
great.
also have a slide of costumes there, Paul, if you
Yep.
want to put that on there.
Oh, great.
These are the ones that you haven't seen yet, I think.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
How much did that thing weigh on your head?
Unbelievably light. Very, very light. It couldn't weigh anything at all because the speed that we traveled with, especially on the pinwheel, was just like, I don't know. I'm sure it didn't come up to 10 G's, but it was pretty darn, it was pretty darn fast. And yeah, the hat was attached to the wig. It was glued to the wig. And I don't know if you remember, you saw a picture of me getting my skate fixed, but you also saw a headband on my head. And everyone put their hair in a net and then put the headband on the net and then affixed all the wigs to the headband. And it was pretty secure. I don't remember anybody's wig coming off except Gene's one time when he made it come off. He was the Queen of Hearts, and that was, he did that on purpose. So yeah. My favorite number the second year was Jukebox Saturday Night, and that's the lower left-hand side. It was the most fun doing a jitterbug on ice. It was great. Oh, you see a picture of the capes up there in the center
Oh,
with
yeah.
all those light bulbs on them. Yeah.
I have two questions real quick, if I can ask them.
Yeah.
When you, so when you're skating on the ice, you're breaking the fourth wall and you're making personal contact with the people that you go whizzing by?
Oh, well, when we're whizzing, probably not. But yeah, if you're standing there, and that's, I mean, that's the point, to involve them as much as possible. One of the times that maybe we would involve them just a little bit too much was when during the kitty number where another girl and I were Raggedy Andy's and we went out into the audience, and her costume opened up. Her Raggedy Andy costume opened up. And some little girl or some little boy said, "Mommy, I don't think that's a rag. I don't think that's a boy." I was awfully glad I had made the decision to wear a t-shirt underneath
Oh,
that,
geez. Oh, my
that
God.
costume. But yeah, when my brother came to see us and my parents came to see us in the show, just made a beeline up to their seats, and I sat on my brother's lap and ruffled up his hair and really irritated him. Of course, we had to quickly get back up on the ice, but that was great fun. The kids love to shake your hands, and people got just like, I think probably the most poignant time I had was, I think this also happened in Amarillo, Texas. What a place, with just flies everywhere. But they brought in a whole like van load full of disabled people in wheelchairs and people actually on gurneys that were quadriplegics. And they set them up along the dash, kind of close to the contour, not out in front, but kind of close to the contour. So I remember being at the end of the show. That was my spot on stage right, was back toward the contour. And I remember seeing one of, and at least there was, I don't know how old all these people were, but the person that was right in front of me was probably a teenager, and he just kept moving his head. And mind you, this is a fun thing to do. It's glittery and fun, but you get to the point where you don't know if it makes a difference at all, ever. And this kid was absolutely streaming tears, absolutely sobbing, and it was a boy. And it was that was pretty emotional also. For me, this was the dream of my lifetime. For most everybody else in the show, they didn't make it into the Olympics, so it was kind of a step back for what they had initially started to skate for. And so my attitude was a lot different than most everybody else. And mind you, I was probably 10 years older than everybody else. They called me grandma, and and they'd walk behind me in the dressing room and find more gray hair. And but in actuality, that's why I didn't get sent home the second year, I'm pretty sure, because I was good to have backstage. My attitude was so totally different than other people's attitudes. I remember somebody put a sign on somebody else's back that said, kick me, it's my birthday. And they were going to send them out on the ice like that. And I was like, no, this isn't a rinky dink thing like Ron Urban. This is professional. And I'm thinking, that would never happen on Broadway. So, well, yes, I know. I found that out too. Yes, you're right, Connie.
Second question.
Yeah.
At the end of the pinwheel, how did you stay connected?
We had a special hold.
Are zooming, like on the out on the pond. If you got on the end of the crack the whip, you were in the snowbank.
That's right, but you didn't hold on to people like we did. I don't know if you can see this, but we would hold each other on the wrists. So it was a chain. Yes, like that. And it's a pretty darn good hold. You'd slip off your sweater, but we didn't have sweaters on. So it was a good hold. And also you have, I don't know if you remember the photos, but you're leaning toward the center of the pinwheel. So the force is pulling you out, but you're leaning in so much that the hold is much more stable than you think it is. So I don't remember anything ever coming apart, and it won't ever again, because Ice Capades and Ice Follies and Holiday on Ice, they're all bankrupt.
Is that right? Oh,
Pardon?
I'm sorry to hear that. I must say, this is very moving to watch and so marvelous to have you present all the little stories and give us a glimpse of this. I am stunned at the amazing number of places that this group traveled and the distances. You traveled from as far south as Texas, all the way up through Canada or even into Mexico?
Oh yeah, we went, the first year, it's usually 30, first year was 31 cities. The next year I think was 30. But that's from August, the 1st of August, we put the show together in, of all places, Bakersfield, California, in the middle of a desert in August. Can you believe that? And then we opened the show in Bakersfield. Of course, it was kind of messy by that time, still kind of messy. And then we went to Sacramento and we spent 2 weeks there because the house was really, really small. It was a converted theater, which it was gorgeous, absolutely gorgeous. Kind of like the Landmark in Syracuse or the Proctor's in Schenectady, if you've ever been to one of those houses.
Mhm.
And so we spent 2 weeks there. But every place else was 1 week. And I think the furthest north we went was Halifax, and probably Sacramento and Bakersfield were the most west. And then of course, Portland, Maine, and Savannah, Georgia, Macon, Georgia, and Amarillo and Odessa, Texas were the most southerly place we went. We stayed in the center of the continent for the most part. Well, except for Halifax and Moncton. Yeah.
Wow.
Thanks,
I
Chris.
remember when I was a kid, this was a long time ago, and I was probably only about eight or 9 years old. My parents took us to see Ice Capades, and it was either in Albany or Erie, Pennsylvania, or Dallas, Texas would have been the only possible places. And the thing I remember is that it was such a big buildup. That my parents made us know that we were going to see something that was really special. And unfortunately, I don't remember that much about it, but but I remember the milieu of going to it and everything, and it was great. Yeah.
Well, there's so much going on at every moment, and you can find something in it. Most everybody can find something in it to be excited about, whether it's the artistry of the soloists or the HAPs or the all the glitz and precision skating and the kids numbers, and they always had a lot of comedy too. The first year that I was in the show, we had an Olympic gymnast who had taken his gymnastics and made it into a comedy act with a trampoline and a diving board. So he pretended that he was diving into a pool. And of course there was a tramp there, and he'd do all kinds of crazy things in the air. And he was absolutely hilarious. I thought my father was going to fall over every single time they came to see our show. He wasn't interested in seeing me anymore. He just wanted to watch Don Dunfield. Well, that's not true, but yeah, my parents were with me every step of the whole way, and it was a victory for them as well.
When I was a kid, we couldn't see it because it always came to Buffalo during Lent. And at that time, we were observant. Never go. No movies, and especially no Ice Capades, because it was so fancy. I'd see them advert just like Brian said, they're coming to town. Sorry, it's Lent, you can't go.
Well, yeah, I saw a lot of commercials on YouTube when I was trying to find. I have very few pictures of myself. Of course, I have nothing, and all these kids that skate now have, videos of every step they take on the ice. And I have not one single video of myself skating that I can make out myself. have a lot of still photos, but not any videos. So I was scouring YouTube for some sort of videos for a long time now. And about 4 or 5 years ago, Jennifer Ekman, who was an HAP in that second precision number, actually put that up, the clip that you saw of precision. She put that up on YouTube. I hadn't seen it before. I was just kind of nosing around trying to find something for this presentation. I was delighted when I found that. And also delighted that Paul knew how to put it in.
Well, it's just stunning how straight those rows were. I don't know how on earth you did that. It's almost perfect.
Well, that was the point. Yeah. And,
Practice.
and it almost always was a correction, a note that we had at half hour. Make sure you mark. And it's just, you know, just like marching. It's you look to your left or your right, and you better make sure that that line is straight.
But I have a question for you. Have you ever skated to live Baroque flute music?
I don't think flute music, but perhaps I skated to lute, Baroque lute. I used to have a tape that I would put on. Chances are not when anybody else was in the rink, but
a friend of mine used to play recorder live for Cirque du Soleil, so
oh wow.
could happen.
Kathy has a question there. She's got her hand up.
Oh, I'm sorry.
What kind of injuries, other than the one that fell from the sky, what kind of injuries, or maybe there weren't any, but I can't imagine that there weren't, did you have to deal with, or were others having to deal with?
That's a question I haven't been asked, Kathy. That's a really good one, because this show, all of the shows were built for 6 to 9 shows a week. So you couldn't have any sort of choreography that would be like dangerous if you could help it. And so the main, anybody that was injured was usually a solo skater that was injured on a jump or something. Now, having said that, when we finished 3 weeks of rehearsal on ice for 8 hours a day, when we put the shows together in August, a lot of times, I mean, all our boots were custom made, and they're like, when you first get a new pair of ice skate boots, in order for them to be really good skates, they're like iron, and it's really hard to break them in. And so being on the ice that long for 3 weeks straight, plus all the off ice ballet training and dance that we had, there were an awful lot of horrendous blisters. That was probably the worst thing that I've seen. Trina Aiello had a blister on her Achilles. I swear to God, I've never seen anything so gross in my life. And she actually took a razor blade to the back part of, no, don't cringe like that, Laura. It wasn't her foot. It was her skate, which is almost as bad, cringeworthy. She took a razor blade to the skate and opened up the back of the skate. It was so painful. It was disgusting to look at, and I thought for sure she was going to lose her foot, but she made it through. Yeah, but that was the blisters are probably the worst. Probably the worst. Or I've forgotten everything. I don't know.
How often did you change skates? I mean, how often would you have to break in a new pair?
I bought those skate boots the spring of 81, and then I went into the show that fall, and I didn't buy another pair of boots, until 2 years ago when my great niece was going to be on the ice for the first time at age 2, and I couldn't get my foot into my skates anymore. So the skates are still fine, but it's the heavy jumping that makes it, it's just, I was a super jumper. I didn't land very well, but I was a great jumper. But the force that you put on those boots when you're jumping and you're landing, not necessarily the way that I landed most of the time, but it's a lot of force. So your boots break down. Probably if you're skating, if you're doing a lot of freestyle, I don't know, I'd say maybe 3 or 4 years, 2, 3, 4 years. They're not like ballet dancers, not like you have to have a new pair every.
Yeah, that's what I was wondering.
Yeah.
Do you still remember any of the steps, any of the combinations?
It was funny when I saw that clip, and you couldn't see it here, at least I couldn't, because it was kind of stop action and you couldn't hear the music. But there was a Brian, you'll get this terminology. There was a T stop, a left T stop, and then another left. We all lined up on stage right on the dash, and we were, arm in arm, and we had a left T stop and a left T stop, and then a grapevine, and then a right T stop and a right T stop, and then another grapevine, and then some sort of a move, I don't know what it's called, but we separated into 2 lines, and then we came back together again into 1 line, and it was the rhythm that went slap, clap, snap, and then da 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 da. I can remember the minute I saw that, I came back to me like it was yesterday. Yeah, I don't remember an awful lot of choreography, but I do remember being terrified in the death splice with Precision that very first night, my opening night. And we had 36 skaters in a block, shoulder width apart from each other. And halfway up the ice, we split into 2 blocks. And one half went to the left and one half went to the right. Well, I had not had a dress rehearsal yet. Whatever with that number. And in my first number in the show, I panicked when we were in the death splice. And I said, "Where's Nancy Anderson's green leotard? She looks like everybody else." And I didn't know who to follow. So I made a guess, and I guessed right. Nobody went down. But boy, if one person went down in that death splice, everybody was down, and that's why it was called death splice.
So do you still skate every year?
No.
You don't?
I keep saying I'm going to, but I don't get. I somehow the fall semester gets away from me, and by the time I want to go skating, they're already tearing the ice up.
Mm-hmm.
So no, I haven't been. It's quite frustrating for me, actually. It was nice to be on the ice with my 2.5-year-old niece, great niece. Of course, I was on the ice with my niece and my nephews, and that was great fun in Ohio State after Thanksgiving a couple of years ago. But no, it's I didn't keep at it, and when you don't keep at something, you lose it. And so then you think you should be able to do it, and you can't, and so you just come off the ice, just total frustration. Let me start something else. So yeah, but I'm up to go skating on the canal if anybody wants to go when they open up Canada again.
Well, this gives me good programming ideas for next season with TAMS. now we just need to start raising money for silicone, skating rink for.
And TAMS costumes. Yeah, what are our costumes going to be, Paul? What are these headdresses going to be?
A fortune in feathers.
Yeah.
True.
I'm just afraid there's going to be a weight requirement.
No,
I don't want to
I
get
have
kicked
anything to
out.
say about it. That's being waived, Cindy.
If you're too light, you have to go home and have some beers.
So how often would they weigh you to see if you needed to get a?
Oh, we got weighed every year, or every year, every week.
Really? Wow.
Thursday and Friday of every week were weigh-ins, but you never knew whether it was going to be boys first or girls. And so, like I said, I got fined a lot the second year because between the first and the second year was the first year in 5 years that I hadn't skated all summer, and I didn't do anything. And 3 o'clock in the afternoon came around, and Alex Bay is kind of an interesting place to be in the summertime. And my dad and my mom and I would sit on the front porch and have a root beer float and watch all the tourists walk by. And I went back to the show 3 pounds overweight. And so they told me how to diet, or they were going to send me home. Well, I never had been on a diet in my life. I didn't know how to do that. So I simply quit eating. And then toward the end of the week, when they were going to weigh me, I quit drinking. So, so then of course I lost 4 or 5 pounds that week. And then I'd go eat everything under the sun. And then I have to do the same thing over the next week. So it started a real back and forth kind of thing. I remember the last week before we opened, we went into some friends of mine and me went into Hollywood. We went to Disney World, and we were at Disney World all day, and I didn't even have any water. And I think it was like 103 degrees or something like that. And I am not a hot person. I hate heat. And but the reason that we went, because a friend of mine was doing Dolly at the Dorothy Chandler Pavilion, and it was a national tour of Hello Dolly, and she was playing Dolly. And so we went to see her. And since we were going to see her, we decided to go to Disney World or Disneyland also. So yeah, that whole year, I just could not figure out how to do the whole dieting thing.
Yeah,
And I got fined so many times, probably every other week. They didn't send me home because they liked me. They liked my influence backstage, especially, but it was tough for me. Yeah. Hi. Yeah, Mike.
How did that lady, you were early on when you were talking about the woman who made the call and got the interview for you?
Yeah, Jeanette.
Yeah, explain that to me again. How did she have such pull, or did she have a gun, or what did she do?
Okay, well, here's the deal on that. I sound like the president.
Yeah.
I have a 8x10 glossy. Nobody knows me at all. No one in the skating world really knows me because I haven't gone to competitions. I haven't gone to travel with anybody. And so here comes this resume in to Bill Bain in the studio in Hollywood every Wednesday afternoon. He opens up the manila envelope, and here's this same 8x10 glossy with this person's resume on the back. And the resume is, yeah, I'm college and, cheerleading and, blah, blah, blah. But it doesn't say much at all about skating because I didn't do anything. And so just like every kid, all your students, those of you who work with students, everybody says, well, I don't want any help. I want to do this all by myself. I don't want you to call anybody, or I don't want anybody to know that I want to do this because then they'll think that I just got it because you called, something like that. Well, we all need that. We all need networking. And that's one of the huge takeaways that I was able to use this whole experience in my counseling with students in the Career Center at Clarkson. It does not matter. You have to put out when you get that job. You have to do well or they're going to get rid of you. But all bets are off on how you get that job, because everybody's using every resource available in order to get that job. And for me, I had a lot of success talking to kids because I knew in my soul that I was telling them the truth. And that helped a lot of kids be able to say, okay, well, I'll call that alum and I'll find out, what they did to find a job. And oh, in the meantime, I really like your company, those kinds of things, So
But who was this woman that called?
Oh, Jeanette, yeah.
Yeah.
She didn't really have, back to the story. Thanks, Connie, for keeping me on track. She didn't really have any pull, except that she had skated in the show, and she called Bill Bain and said, she doesn't have any skating background, but she can do this. I've just watched her in a show, with my daughter or my stepdaughter. So he had, eyes on the ground. All of a sudden, somebody said, oh yeah, she can do this. The worst thing about it is that I mentioned Gus Lucy way back in the Lake Placid slide, but I babysat for Gus Lucy's 2 grandchildren for a week. And because Sergey, Gus's son, still owns the Holiday Inn in Lake Placid. And I babysat for his 2 kids while he and Caroline went to Italy to see Gus and his wife in November of that year. And when Gus came back, Sergey, for a thank you, gave me 3 lessons with Gus. Now, Gus was Dorothy Hamill's coach, and Gus was the coach of a billion other people. I mean, he was about as high as you can get. Gus Lucy and John Nix, they were the best. And if I had just said to Gus, when he was teaching me a different way to go into my spins, because he was known for his spinning, if I had just said, Mr. Lucy, I really want to skate in a show. I don't know if I need all these jumps and spins, but I really want to just skate in the line in a show. 1 phone call from him and I would have been in 5 years earlier. 1 phone call. But I would have missed that great 3 years in New York, where I learned a lot, and all the conversation that Connie and I have had about New York. I would have missed all of that. So, it all worked out for the best.
I can see this being a documentary on PBS.
Oh my.
Well,
Are
actually,
you
all
producing it?
of the stories that we've had, look back at the whole year.
It's been a great year.
It's been really fun. So.
And I have to say, Paul, I've been telling people about why I'm doing this, and they are so impressed that you thought of a way to keep us all together, even though we're not singing.
Yeah.
Totally impressed.
Yep.
Well, being upfront, I actually knew a lot of people's backstories, and it dawned on me that people in the chorus didn't necessarily know all the interesting things that everyone does, and so it was a great way to get to know everyone and stuff.
And that's why I asked you to record it, because my family, my niece and my nephews don't have a clue. Don't have a clue about
it's
this.
still recording, so everybody wave. What's your niece and nephew's names? What's their names?
I don't think Alex was on. Yeah, Alex is the only one that I gave the link, that you gave the link to. He's the only one that asked. He's the one that lives in New York.
That's great. Well, another idea I had for another salon, in case we have another pandemic. No, just joking. You know,
Bite
I
their
think,
tongue.
yeah, I know. I think we should do an evening of everybody telling their most embarrassing stories from their life. So I think, you know.
I wouldn't be able to pick one.
Great. Well, thank you, Brownie.
Yeah.
Thanks, everybody.
Thank
And thank you,
you.
Paul, again for all your help.
And I don't have any profound closing words, but hopefully we can all actually sing together again next fall. So everybody stay healthy until then. And
Thank you, Paul.
Yes, thank you. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Paul.
Bye, everybody.